Hi. If you don't know me, my name is Sabrina, and today I just want to share my story, my testimony of how I became a Christian and what my life looked like growing up and kind of what it looked like in um, my older years and up until recently, a few years ago, when my faith kind of changed. And this video is going to be kind of a mixture of mental health issues and faith issues, so just take that into consideration. um so yeah, without further ado, let's do this. I'm gonna try and do this in one go. So I grew up in a pretty religious household. My father was a deacon at the church that I was born and raised into, and my mother was pretty involved in the nursery. Um, the church I was born and raised into was Reformed Baptist, which is fairly stricter than regular Baptist in my experience. It was not a great place to be. I remember it caused a lot of upset and fear and anxiety in my older childhood years, and it was sad. It was really disheartening to be in an environment like that, because church shouldn't be a place where it induces fear and anxiety. It should be a place that relieves it. And this place was very much inducing the fear and the anxiety in my family and in, I'm sure, other people that went there. But it wouldn't be until I was about 11 before my father put his foot down and kind of got us out of there, and we started church hopping. We went to multiple different denominations and types of churches. For a while, I remember it was a while that we were kind of without a home base. I was probably late middle school when we found a Presbyterian church that my parents really liked, and that's where we kind of remained up until I graduated high school. That place was a lot better. It was a lot more accepting and welcoming, and the people there were kinder. We didn't feel as drained being there. We didn't feel as judged being there, which was a big step. It was a good step. And up until we started going there, Jesus and God, it was all kind of, it was a part of my life, but it wasn't my life. It wasn't my personal choice to be there. I just kind of went because my parents took me. um, but I started to get more interested in the Jesus and God that the Presbyterian church was teaching about, because the one that I grew up with, that God was very very judgy, very hellfire, and if you didn't come to church perfect, then you needed to go home, fix yourself, and then come back next week made up. And it was definitely a place where you could not be broken, you could not be real, because if you were, then you obviously weren't as righteous, and that wasn't a God that I wanted to be a part of. That wasn't a God I wanted to follow and worship. So I just didn't really believe in him or want to believe in him until we started going to the Presbyterian church. And there I learned about a Jesus that was a lot kinder and a lot more accepting of your brokenness, and, actually wanted you to be better for you. And it wasn't you have to be better in order to worship me. It was, I want you to be better so that you're not hurting anymore. And I liked that kind of Jesus. So I got saved when I was 13. I had a lot of problems growing up, and I wouldn't know until about a year or two ago what those problems were. But growing up, I was very much struggling in some areas mentally, and I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, even as young as like 10, 11, as far back as I can remember. I had just a lot of anxiety and depression. And a lot of it was due to the fact that my brain just wasn't working like my friends, and it was very obvious that like I struggled a lot more in school, and that's kind of a big deal whenever you were homeschooled, which I was homeschooled my entire life too. So in a homeschool setting, struggling in school is kind of a big deal. So like 2-3 years ago, I found out that I actually have ADHD, and that made so much sense. It was just like, oh, so that's why I was struggling in the school. That's why I had so much anxiety and depression at such a young age. And it was because my brain was just overworking itself, and I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't know what was wrong. So yeah, whenever I was 13, I was having one of those nights where my brain was just working overtime, and I was just overthinking and freaking myself out, and I got into a panic attack. And I remember just lying in bed being like, Jesus, they say you can help me with this, so please help me, like, and I will be yours. Like, if you can help me with this, I will be yours. And I just kind of felt a peace wash over me. And that's such like a Christian thing to say, but it's true. So I went and got my older sister, and I was like, hey, like, how do you get saved? How do you say the prayer? How do you go about it? And she went and woke up my mom. And both of them took me back to my room, and they were just like, what's going on? Like, you want to get saved? And I was like, yeah, like, I think it's time. And so I remember they walked me through the prayer. They prayed with me, and then they led me through the prayer of salvation, and I gave my life to Jesus. And it was a beautiful moment. We sat there, we cried, we hugged, we were, really, really happy in that moment. And I remember just being like, okay, Jesus, like, help me now, like, please do something. So I got baptized a couple months later because my family was like, you're saved, you gotta get baptized now. And I was like, okay, like, let's do it. And in Presbyterian churches, they just kind of do the sprinkling. They just get some water, pat your head, and then send you on your way. And it's but it was still a beautiful moment. I had one of my best friends come, and she got to watch me get baptized, and it was a good day, and it's one that I still remember fondly. But as I got older, obviously, like, I changed, and my faith kind of went through ups and downs, but it was it was always okay. Like, I was always an okay Christian, I guess. Um, and, but also as I got older, my anxiety and my depression got worse. Um, and by the time I was 16, I had to go on depression medicine because it had just gotten to the point where I could barely function during the day. And that was a very discouraging thing. That was something that I actually kept secret from a lot of my friends, because I didn't want people to know, like, oh, I'm broken and I have to take medicine to make it better. And I didn't really want people to know that. And of course, whenever my friends found out, like, they weren't upset with it. They were like, "Oh, like, that's okay. Like, sometimes you need a little help." And but the medication just wasn't helping. It was actually making things worse for me. Um I started to gain weight. I wasn't eating right. At first, I was losing a bunch of weight, and then they changed it, and I went on a different medication that made me gain weight. And it was just, it was a constant up and down. So I was constantly going on medication and off medication, just trying to find what worked for me, and none of it worked. And I found out again later, once I was properly diagnosed with ADHD, that that's why. When you have ADHD, depression and anxiety medicine, they don't work for you. And so I went through a lot of different medications and a lot of changes to my mental state and my body that just weren't good for a high schooler. It wasn't the best experience. Um, and as I got older and entered into youth group and started dating, the church that I loved kind of became a place that I didn't love anymore. And it just became a kind of unsafe place for me, mentally, because a lot of my friendships were very competitive. In the youth group, it was small, and a lot of us were pitted against each other. And a lot of my friendships were fake. We were fine to each other's faces, but high schoolers, we're fine to your face, and then behind your back, we're terrible. And so my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, he saw what the youth group was doing to me, and he saw what the church was doing to me, and he was like, "You've been in a bad church before as a young kid. You don't need to be in another church environment like that." And he actually got me out. He put his foot down. He's like, "I want to marry you in the future, and like, I think you should start coming to church with me. I think you should see a different perspective of Jesus than the one that you've kind of had this whole time." And because up until then, like, yeah, this Jesus was kinder and he was better than the first church I was part of, but this God was still very much you had to follow the rules, you had to complete the checklist every day and every week. You couldn't really be a broken and sinful person in youth group, and I got judged very harshly by not just my peers but also by the youth pastor. And it was just, I did not feel like I belonged there. I didn't really fit the mold that they were telling me to get in. And so, yeah, that one summer, my husband took me to his church's kind of week of summer school type thing. And it was really fun and I enjoyed it. And I remember listening to the pastor and thinking like, oh, I understand this. And I didn't really, hold on. But I understood it. And because the way that they taught Jesus, it wasn't so much about religion as it was having a relationship with Jesus, and that every day you should be striving to strengthen that relationship because Jesus loves you. And even if you're not okay and you're not perfect, like, that's fine as long as you're still taking those steps towards Jesus and living how he kind of laid out for you. As long as you're still trying to do that, like, that's fine. And I was very much like in love with that idea, I guess. I loved that even though I was broken and even though I didn't fit the standard Bible Belt mold of Christianity, like, that's not who Jesus came for. He came for someone like me who was dealing with a lot of doubt and a lot of depression and dark seasons. He came for people like me. He came to save people like me. And I needed to hear that in that time. And so when I was 18, I rededicated my life to God and I got rebaptized, and this time I got fully dunked, and Joshua was right behind me getting dunked as well. Like, we got baptized at the same time and it was so cool. It was a good moment. And we celebrated with like Zaxby's afterwards. And it was fun. It was a good experience. So yeah, that was the first time in my life where I was like, I understand the gospel now. Like, I understand who Jesus is now. And that's the Jesus that I want to follow. That's the Jesus I want to call my Lord. And so I went to church every Sunday. And as I got older, Joshua and I got married, and we got married young. I think I was about to turn 19 whenever we got married. And we just went through life. And life was, it had its ups and downs, and my faith had its ups and downs. I eventually went off medication for a while, and then I don't remember when I went back on it. Like I said, I was constantly on and off medication for everything. I had some really low moments. I struggled with an eating disorder at one point. I struggled with really bad depression at one point. At many points I struggled with really bad depression. But through it all, I still held on to my faith. I still really enjoyed going to church and being a part of church. Started serving, and then 2020 happened, and everything just kind of was over at that point. And 2020 was a hard year for a lot of people. And I had a 2-year-old at that point. Josh and I had our first daughter in 2018. So yeah, in 2020, she was 2. And I that was hard. That was a hard year. That's kind of whenever my faith started to change a lot. Because the churches shut down. Um, a lot of people that I considered to be really good Christians were acting very hateful, and it broke my heart, and I didn't really want to be associated with Christians like that. So yeah, a lot happened in such a short amount of time, and when 2021 rolled around, I got pregnant again, and I had our second daughter at the end of 2021. But that was also a hard year because we got uprooted from our home, basically. We had been living in this house, and then we weren't, and we had to move into the apartment above the shop where Josh works. His boss was very gracious, very kind, in letting us stay there until this house got built. So we were uprooted. We still weren't in church. We were going through a lot that year. Our house was taking forever to be built. So that was really discouraging. And I was going through it. I had really bad postpartum depression. I had really bad anxiety because, I mean, everything was just constantly changing and it was crazy. And I was having an identity crisis. Because I wasn't in church, so I wasn't reading my Bible anymore. I wasn't praying anymore. And when you stop listening to what God says about you, you start to believe the lies that you tell yourself about you. And I was very much believing those lies because I wasn't filling myself up with God's truth anymore. And that led me down some really dark paths. And I ended up in 2022 having a mental breakdown, and it was really bad. I became a shell of myself. I wasn't enjoying life anymore. I was having a hard time connecting with my husband and my children, and I didn't know how to get out of this dark pit that I had dug myself into. And in May of that year, I kind of snapped. I had been hanging on to this thread of survival for so long, and one day it just broke, and I fell into a really bad place. I remember that day pretty clearly. It was the 27th of May, and I remember just feeling absolutely defeated that day. Everything was just too much. I was struggling to get by that day, and I became just really overwhelmed and overstimulated, and I was supposed to be going to my parents that day because it was my mom's birthday and we were having dinner, and I had just had enough, and I had been having a lot of passive suicidal ideation thoughts, And that day, it just kind of overwhelmed me. And I put my girls in the car and I took them to my mom's. I handed them over to my mom and I said, I need a minute. And I left. And I didn't know if I would be coming back that day, because as I drove away and started driving around, I was praying for God to take me out. And he didn't, obviously, and I'm very thankful that he didn't. He very much guided me to my best friend at the time's house, and I broke down in her kitchen. I cried like I had never cried in my life, and it was hard. My husband did kind of have an idea of what was going on, but he was at work, and so he couldn't really do anything. He got off as quickly as possible, but he was kind of far away, so he was trying to make his way to my mom's house to get the girls, because he knew that I was not okay. But my best friend, she was able to calm me down and kind of get me in a better mindset of life. And I went back to my mom's house and made it through the rest of the day. But the following, I think it was a Tuesday, I had an appointment with a psychiatrist for the first time in my life. I had been going to a therapist and been seeing a therapist, and like I said, I was slowly entering this dark place, and my therapist was like, we need to get you evaluated. We need to find out what's wrong so that we can treat it, because you're falling and you're not getting better when you should be. So I was on a video call with the psychiatrist that following Tuesday. And when he found out what had happened on the 27th, he immediately was like, no, you have to go to the hospital. He's like, thoughts like that are not okay. He was like, and you need treatment now. He's like, I don't think you are safe to yourself. And in 22, there were still a lot of COVID regulations in play, and that made it really hard. I had to go into the ER by myself, and I went up to the nurse and I explained what had happened, why I was there, and the look she gave me was devastating. It was kind of a moment of, oh gosh, like I really am in bad shape. She immediately got me back into the psych ward, and that was an experience. I was very much scared because I had everything taken from me while I was back there. All my jewelry, my phone, my socks, they stripped me of everything. I was only allowed to keep my glasses. And they put me in paper pajamas and grippy socks and put me in a room. Unfortunately, that room had no door. And I was very much exposed to all the other patients back there. And I remember just being terrified. And that was probably the first time I had prayed in a while. And I basically said, God, no, like I can't be here. I need you to get me out of here. I need you to keep me safe. So I was in the psych ward for about 2-3 hours. And then they transferred me to a mental hospital. And I remember thinking how wild it was that my first time in the back of a police car was to be transferred to a hospital. And not that, I had any other reason to be in the back of a police car, but I just, in my state of mind, I thought it was humorous. But the police officer was very kind. He was very respectful. He made sure I felt comfortable and safe. And he drove me I think it was about 45 minutes away. He drove me there. He made sure I got there safely, and he was kind. He talked to me, and I wasn't really in the mood to talk, and so he just turned on music, and the music he chose was worship music. And I remember just kind of being like, okay, because I had fallen very far from God, and that was kind of a moment of maybe I shouldn't have walked away. And I very much felt God trying to call me back. And I was very, very sad listening to that worship music. Sad because I missed it. I had missed it. And at that point, we were back in church. We had started going around the Christmas before. Josh's family had invited us to the Christmas service at their church, and we were sorry, flashback moment. But we were on the way to the Christmas service, and we were talking because we had tried going back to church before, but our girls just weren't having it. They were having meltdowns. They didn't want to go in. And Josh and I were like, okay, we're not gonna push this. But at the Christmas service, on the way there, we were talking, and we were like, we do miss kind of having a church to be a part of. So if the girls go into the kids' church, okay, then we'll stay. We'll start going there. And the girls went in amazing. I mean, they just walked right in. They were happy to be there, and they had so much fun. And so Josh and I were like, okay, like this is where we're gonna go. This is gonna be our home church from now on. And we had both enjoyed it. So when I was in the back of the police car on the way to the mental hospital, I was like, okay, like I've been going to church, I've been back in that, but I hadn't really been present in church. I had just kind of been going through the motions, the familiarity of it. I very much wasn't into being a Christian anymore, and church was just a routine for me. So whenever I heard the worship music playing, I was like, okay, God, like, I hear you, I see you, like, I know you're trying to get me back, I just don't know if I'm ready yet. And so we got to the mental hospital, and I was assessed. They stripped me down, they checked me over, made sure that all my scars and whatever I had, bruises, whatever, that they weren't self-harm, that they were just natural, me bumping into stuff or whatever, which was, again, humiliating. I had just been through it a few hours before, and I was going through it again, and that is just a humiliating situation and a very humbling situation, because in that moment you realize, like, you are no longer in control here. You are very much under the care and protection of other people now, and that was a eye-opening moment. And it was very late whenever I got checked in. It was close to midnight, I think, at that point. I wasn't even able to call my husband and let him know that I had arrived. I was able to call him and tell him where I was going. And that's another thing. Not being able to say goodbye to my husband was really hard, because I didn't know how long I would be gone. I didn't know how long I was gonna be there. Like, I was very much under control of someone else at that point, and that is a hard reality. That is. So my husband didn't really know I had made it or that I was okay until the next day, I think. But I went to bed. I had a roommate, didn't get to meet her until the morning. And that mental hospital was my life for, I don't know, maybe like a week. I very much begged to get out of there. I did not feel safe there. I did not like being there. And there were only a few people there that I actually did feel safe and comfortable with, and it wasn't the staff. It wasn't. It was the other patients. And when they went home, I was like, I don't feel safe here anymore. So I pretty much begged to be let go, because I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm having more anxiety and fear here than I was at home. Like, I want to go home. So they let me go after a week. They had diagnosed me with a major depressive disorder, which was not accurate. They also said I had, this is their words, they said I had a hint of bipolar, and that wasn't right either. I knew that wasn't right, but I was put on heavy depressive medicine. I was put on a small dose of bipolar medication, sleep medication, anxiety medicine, and one other. I was put on like 5 medications while I was there, and I came out of that mental hospital a zombie. I was a lot worse off coming out than I was going in. And unfortunately that happens a lot in places like that. But when I got out, I was so happy to see my family again. That was the best hug of my life. Whenever I saw my husband, I practically jumped in his arms and I just clung to him, because I was like, I never want to go back in there, and I never want to experience anything like that again. And I was just so happy to see him. And I was so happy to see my girls whenever I finally got home and saw them. Like, it was good for about a week. And then it started to scramble up again because, like I said, the medications that we're on, they weren't right. And I still wasn't quite right with God either. There had been a lot of God moments in the mental hospital, which I will forever be thankful for. One of those moments was Sunday, the Sunday I was there. I was sitting at the table in the day room coloring, and I realized what time it was and what day it was. And I was really, really sad because I realized that my husband and my girls were at church and I wasn't. I was there. And I wanted to be with them. And I had had many talks with the other patients that I was friends with, and they were all very encouraging. But one guy that I barely talked to, he was always reading the Bible. And that day, he came up and he sat down with me and he said, "Is it okay if we talk about the Bible for a bit?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." I was like, I'm missing out on church right now with my family, so let's do it. And so he sat and he talked to me about the Bible. And we just kind of went through our favorite scriptures, just kind of reading back and forth what we enjoyed, and it was nice. It was another kind of nudge from God that, hey, like, I want you back. I want you to come back to me. And even though I had been, praying in there, it was those kind of half-hearted, like, God, if you get me out of here, like, sure, I'll try kind of thing to be a Christian again. But when I finally got out and things just started getting worse, I was getting worse. Mine and my husband's relationship was not good because, like I said, I was kind of zombified. I was in a really, really bad place mentally. The medication was messing with me really, really bad. I didn't know if I wanted to be married anymore. I didn't know if I wanted to, like, be a mom anymore. And that went on for about a month after I got out of the hospital. And then one day I was sitting at a red light. My girls were in the back seat. And I remember coming to and being like, how did I get here? I don't remember driving. And that scared me. That was whenever I realized I'm on the wrong stuff. I'm being treated for the wrong thing. And that's kind of when I realized I had been treated for the wrong thing my whole life. And so I immediately was like, I can't live like this anymore. I cannot live like this. I want to be a mom. I want to be married. I want to live and be joyful and have that joy that I thought I would have by now. And so I went to my psychiatrist and I was like, take me off these medications. I don't want to be on them anymore. And he basically told me no, that he wouldn't take me off of them, and that if I went off of them, I would be going against medical advice. But I distinctly heard God say, get off the medication for a year. Give me a year. And just try and rely on me in that time. And so I fired my psychiatrist. I did. I was like, okay, like, fine. And I never went back to him, and I stopped taking the medication, went completely cold turkey on it. And I was off medication, vitamins, for about a year. And I did. I gave God that year. I was like, I'll go off the medication, but you've got to come through. I was like, you have got to help me. You've got to give me the strength. You've got to give me the help I need to get through this year. And he did. He very much did. It took a while. I mean, it was 2020 to 2023. But he did. He very slowly, I started being more receptive to him. I started trying to be more present in church and actually absorb the worship songs, and actually I tried to apply the sermons, and it was very small steps. That was my first step, because I felt God saying, hey, I love you. And I know you don't want to be here, and I don't want you here anymore. I don't want you to be in this dark pit anymore. You deserve so much better. And I did. Everybody deserves better than the pit. Like, it's not for you. it's not for anybody. And so I just started taking small steps, and God was like, I met you in your darkest moments in the mental hospital. The least I'm asking right now is just for you to meet me at church. You show up to church, and I will show up. And so that's what I did. I started showing up to church as often as every week if I could, unless I was sick. I was going to church. And like I said, I was trying my best to just absorb it, to actually take it in, to feel the words, to feel him as best I could while I was there. And he started healing mine and my husband's relationship. He started healing my relationship as a mother with my children. It took a long time though. He was so slowly and gently just plucking out all the bad things that I had collected over the years. He was just slowly taking those out one by one. And as he was doing that, I was slowly taking steps towards him. I was trying to read my Bible every day. I was trying to listen to worship music more. I started serving in church. And yeah, I was trying to take these small steps. As he was taking the bad things out, I was trying to take the small steps towards the good things. And at some point, I don't know if it was 2023 or 2024, but he started putting on my heart, like, maybe this is what's wrong. Maybe this. So I started doing a lot of research, and I started looking into things and being like, why didn't these work? Why why didn't this work for me? And as I was doing that, I started realizing that a lot of my symptoms and my like depression and anxiety, they were all stemming from me being ADHD. And I remember it was just this light bulb moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I have ADHD. And I immediately called my husband and I was like, babe, I really think I have ADHD. And he was like, okay, well, if you feel that strongly about it, like find a new psychiatrist or talk to your doctor, like whatever, and get diagnosed. He's like, see if they agree. And I was like, okay. So like I said, I did a lot of research and I took it all to my doctor and I was like, hey, this is what's wrong with me and I need help like managing this. And my doctor looked at me and she was like, okay, like I believe you, but you have to get a psychiatrist. Like a psychiatrist has to diagnose you with this. And so like a month later, I had met with a psychiatrist and she had asked me, I think 3 questions, And she was like, yeah, no, you very much have ADHD. She was like, and you need to be on medication for this. And I was very hesitant at first and kind of scared to go on medication again. But I was willing to try it because I was like, I mean, I'm doing better, but I'm not there yet. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I feel like I should be. And so I tried it, and the amount of relief that I felt the first week on that medication was incredible. I was like, where has this been my whole life? Why am I just now experiencing this? Why am I just now feeling what it's like to have a quiet mind, to have all those thoughts that plague me every day to just go silent? And I think I increased my dosage once, but it very much needed. And I will say, like, if you feel like something is not right for you, it's probably not right for you. You need to trust your gut. You need to make those decisions for yourself and not just trust doctors, because I had trusted doctors my whole life and it got me there. And it had also, I mean, a lot of that had also been my own fault because I had walked away from God. But I mean, for the most part, like, I had trusted doctors and they had never actually helped me. They had just helped make things worse. But when I trusted my gut and I trusted God and I was like, you know what, I think I know what's wrong with me because I know my brain and my body better than anybody. So I was able to get on the right medication, and the right medication will work. It will help. Not everybody needs it. Not everybody wants to be on it, and that's fine. For me, it works, and that's my choice. That's just me. But yeah, once I got on the medication, it was like I was finally able to breathe. It was kind of like I was finally seeing the light, and I was like, oh, this is what life is supposed to be like. This is how I'm supposed to be feeling and how I'm supposed to be functioning. And after that, I mean, 2024 was a year of me just fully trying to lean into God again and just getting my relationship with him on track. I was determined to read the Bible every day. I was like, I have to do this. And if I skipped a day, I was like, oh no. And like, which that's just me again. It was just, it was more of when I skipped a day of reading the Bible, I could just feel how spiritually drained I was, and I didn't like it. So I was trying really hard to commit to reading the Bible every day, and 2024 was a year of also just like fully trying to focus on the good again, and just finishing weeding out all of the bad things, and focusing on, my relationship with my husband. We were doing better. We are doing better. Focusing on my girls more, trying to actually step into the role of being mom and being present and loving them and caring for them as best I could. And I still am. I mean, being mom, it's hard work, but I find I can actually find joy in it now. And the person I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, yeah, 3 years ago, not the same person I am now. It's polar opposites now, and Jesus did a lot of that. I had to put in the work. He's like, I'm not gonna get you out of this just for you to go right back. He's like, you gotta put in the work. If I'm gonna get you out and help you through this, you gotta work for it. You have got to get up. You gotta work hard every day to be the person you want to be. He's like, and as long as you are focusing some time on me too, I'll get you through it. And he did. He has very much gotten me through a lot of dark days. And this year, 2025, it hasn't been great so far. It's been pretty rough so far, but I have so much joy and hope now that I didn't have 3 years ago. So even though life is pretty hard right now, and feels kind of out of control and chaotic, I'm still just doing my best to hold on to Jesus, and just hold on to the fact that when I was in my lowest point and when I didn't want to live, he wanted me to live, and he was trying to get me to a point where I wanted to live. And now I do. I want to live. I want to grow old with my husband. I want to see our girls grow older, and it's just, I'm doing things now that 3 years ago I probably wouldn't have even thought to do. I mean, 3 years ago, this wouldn't have been happening. I mean, I didn't really want to do this because I don't like being on camera, but I felt called to share my story, and I just hope that whoever's watching this feels encouraged and knows that they're loved, and life is so much more than the pit. It's so much more than that grave you've dug for yourself. Because I was there, and I didn't think it could be more. I didn't think life could be more than that. But now I know that there is pure joy and love in life outside of that. And I'm so glad that I was saved, and that even when I had walked so far from God, that he was waiting for me. And I'm so glad that no matter how deep I dug, he was still sitting at the top, looking down, waiting for me to look up. And yeah, life is beautiful. It's hard, but it is worth it. Living is worth it in the end. And I just want you to know that. So, yeah, just know you're loved. Know you are cared for, and you are stronger, and God is stronger than the lies you are believing right now. And all you need to do is look for the truth. And the truth, it will set you free. I promise. Anyway, I love y'all, and I hope you're doing well.